So this is the story of my worst ever mistake in motorsports, and I'm hoping that what I've learned will help other people in turn. Now, motorsport and racing is full of highs and full of lows, and I think to some extent you only get the highs if there's a corresponding low. It feels really good to win a race, finish on the podium, set a lap record, pole position, all of that. But when you have those successes, I think it can lead to overconfidence, and overconfidence can be deadly. And that is why I've got these panels from my old race car hanging on the wall to remind me not to get overconfident. So the story begins a few years ago when I'd been doing track days for quite a while, and I really enjoyed it for the reasons I'm sure everyone will understand, just a combination of physical and mental effort to be able to get the car to the best possible lap time, the thrill of speed, all of that good stuff. Now, I came into the world of track days and fast cars from four-wheel drive, and before that flying and gliding and aerobatics, and I had a go at scuba diving and various other adventure sports. And interesting thing is, if you're ever short of a hobby and you want to find something really exciting to do, have a look at a life insurance form, and all the things that they exclude you from doing are probably the fun things in life. So little life hack there. Anyway, throughout all of those sports, I realised one thing, which is that training is the way to make a risky activity less risky, and that's exactly what my t-shirt says. It's not dangerous, it's mitigated risk. Now, that design is on my Red Bubble shop. You can buy it as a t-shirt, a mug, various other things. Really appreciate if you bought a few items there just to help me, and also spread that word of training mitigates risk. So to prepare myself for moving into what I saw as the risky world of fast car driving on circuits, there's 5 things I did to prepare. The first thing I did was study theory such as the circle of traction, racing lines, car dynamics generally, because I don't believe you can be a good driver unless you really understand what the car is doing. The second thing I did was get myself practical training, because no amount of theory is of any use unless you can put it into practice. So I got one-on-one training and classroom training from various drivers up into and including supercar level. I also learnt and practiced car control techniques, understeer, oversteer. I learnt how to drift, I did stunt driving, learnt how to do J-turns, etc. All of that started to build up my car control skills. I also got into sim racing. Now, there's many videos around how sim racing can help and how it's different. Overall, I believe it is helpful, so I'm not going to go over the pros and cons here, but I felt that it was beneficial to me. I also learnt racing driver techniques such as trail braking, heel and toe, downshifting. I've got a separate video on that, how to hold a steering wheel, etc, etc. I was enjoying hot lapping and sprinting and racing myself only against the clock, but I wanted the next level up from that, and obviously that was going to be wheel-to-wheel racing. Lots of people have tried it and said that is the next level, that is the best, and also answers that question. You think you're quick, but you don't really know till you get in exactly the same car as someone else and actually race them. So that was a question I wanted to answer for myself as well. And so we come to the story of my first ever race. Bought a car, did a practice session at a track day just to try and get used to the car, turned up to the event. And one thing about wheel-to-wheel racing is that it's next level in terms of pretty much everything. The way you've got to prepare the car, the kit you've got to buy, the preparation of yourself, the whole process around it, it's a lot more to take in and do, and it can be a bit overwhelming even if you've got you're experienced in track days. So I turned up and did a practice session that went really well, and I qualified, and I was very pleased that I qualified second, only about half a tenth off the guy who got poles, which is great, and I came back into the pits on an absolute high. Then I was told that the cars needed to be weighed. Now, this was new to me because we don't happen to do that in track days and so forth. Said, okay, go get the car weighed. Now, I did know that in advance, and I'd spoken to the guy who I bought the car off. I knew I was about the same weight, and he said, oh yeah, that should be fine, should be easily over, so I didn't worry about it too much. Went to get the car weighed, and turns out I was underweight. Don't remember exactly how much. I think it was 2 to 3 kilograms or something like that. Now, that's on me. I put the car up, I was entering the car, I should have made sure that it was within limits, but it was under. Should have put just a little bit more fuel in the tank. And actually, after that event, when I was under, I just bolted a 20 kilogram weight into the car, and then I've been, 10, 15 plus over every single time. But I didn't know that at the time. So I said, okay, underweight, what happens then? And the category managers said, well, that's a penalty, but, you know, we've had to think about it, and seeing as this is your first offence, your first race, and, you know, it's only couple of kilograms, don't worry about it, we'll just let it stand this one time, but don't do it again. And I said, okay, that works. But the competitors weren't happy with that, and they said, no, he's made a penalty, put him to the back, penalise, and which is fair enough, right? I broke the rules. That's on me. I shouldn't have broken the rules. And to be honest, I didn't really care whether I was at the back or not, because what was important to me was the fact that I'd qualified second first time out. And the fact I was disqualified after that, you know, didn't really make much that difference. It's not like I'd been running an extra 50 kilowatts. I'd made 2 kilograms, and that would have made absolutely no difference to my lap time. So I personally was happy with what my performance was and the weekend was, and I'm still happy with that. I'm still happy that I qualified second on my first ever race. The fact I started at the back, yeah, well, that's kind of incidental to me. That led to me going into the race with the wrong mindset. I knew that I had the pace to run right at the front. I knew that my race pace was typically better than my one lap pace. I knew that from sim racing and also previous work. So I couldn't wait to get to the front and just mix it with the guys right at the top end of the grid. And that's kind of the wrong attitude to come in. I should have gone in with a more relaxed attitude and just seen what I could do, as opposed to being overconfident and wanting to go too fast too quickly, because I made a serious mistake.
So this is the start of the race. I'm right at the back. I ran the corner. I can't actually see the lights, so I wasn't really sure what happened in the start process. So I was basically just going to wait for everyone else to start moving, then I would start moving. And here we go, so I'm just accelerating as hard as I possibly can, and this is my first ever race, first ever turn 1. Well, you can see what happens next.
The crash was 100% my fault, and I admitted that immediately. I didn't attempt to make any protest, and as a mark of just how sorry I was, I actually offered to, and did in fact pay for the damage to the guy's car who I hit, which was in the order of $3,500. You don't normally have to do that. You don't have to do that when you're doing wheel-to-wheel racing, but I felt so bad that I decided to do that. There's two causes there. The immediate one is I braked too late to make the corner, too fast on the inside. And the second one is having braked and then locked the front wheels. Because there's no ABS on that car, I just ploughed absolutely straight on despite turning the steering, which is a really basic mistake. What I should have done there is just ease off the brake a little bit, not jump off it. That would have restored a little bit of traction to the front wheels, circle of grip stuff, and then I could have perhaps made the turn. It would have increased the braking distance, but maybe that would have been the right thing to do. Never really know unless I redo that whole incident, and to be honest, I'm not overly keen on reliving that part of my life again. What are the real fixes for this? And I think there's 3. The first one is race training, as opposed to just one lap. This is how you drive a car fast. This is how you drive a car in a racing situation, how to be a racing driver, not a fast one lap driver. The problem with that is I don't know where to get that training. I didn't know at the time, still don't really know, because even if you have someone next to you, you actually need other cars around you in order to do that sort of training, and it has to be a race environment. So difficult and expensive though it may be, I think it's worth doing, because it's not as difficult and expensive as dealing with the aftermath of a crash, and it's also significantly less dangerous if you do your training first, as opposed to training actually in the heat of a race. Something else which would have been useful would have been somewhere to drive the car and learn techniques such as get myself reacquainted with non-ABS braking, maybe some oversteer, understeer, which you can't really do on a normal track day because the organisers aren't keen on you sliding around corners and doing various different manoeuvres. And again, it's not a good idea to learn that sort of stuff during a race. You want to do it before the race. Then I think mentoring would be a good idea. Like I said, motorsport is overwhelming. There's at wheel-to-wheel level, there's a lot of process, a lot of prep, equipment for the driver, setup of the car, forms, this, that and the other. There's a lot going on, and some mentoring to get people through that would be good. If I go to full drive clubs, for example, the monthly meetings, a lot of clubs have someone who is just there, does nothing else other than to welcome newcomers in, say, hi, what's your name, how you doing, what do you experience, what are you looking for, just make them feel welcome. Full drive clubs have 3-4 levels of training, and then on top of that they typically run a beginners weekend for brand new members to ease people in. Motorsport people, it's like, okay, yeah, well, you should know what you're doing. Good luck at turn 1 at 200 kilometers an hour. And in fact, the way motorsport training tends to work is you turn up, you sort of do your best, you get yelled at, and then you realise you've done something wrong, so then you do it differently, you get yelled at again, and when you're not yelled at, you know you've got it right. And if you get through an entire weekend without anyone yelling at you or getting upset, then that's kind of your qualification. And the weird thing is that out of all the sports, motorsport is probably the one which is the costliest if you make a mistake, and also perhaps one of the greatest potentials for injuries, yet it has only half a focus on safety. So what I mean by half a focus? Well, motorsport is really hot on what I would term the passive side of safety. So you've got to get a lot of gear, you've got to have your hands device, you've got to have a helmet, fireproof this, that and the other, and a lot of technical regulations for the cars, scrutineering, etc. It's really hot on all of that. And that is good. That should not be wound back, and you know, regulations written in blood, etc. But it misses almost completely the other part of safety, which is prevention. So have a look at it. Think back to all the times you've seen a crash on the track. And for me personally, over all the time I've been involved in motorsports and track work, etc., 99% of it, certainly at the amateur level, is driver error. And that is the driver doing something wrong. If the car goes wrong, even if it catches on fire or there's a puncture, typically it will pretty much sort of cruise to a halt and you move it out of the way, and then that's that. But when people spin off the track or crash into each other, as I did, that almost always comes back to a training or driver error, and the way you fix that is training, and yet that's what motorsport doesn't do. When there's a crash or a red flag, we just go, oh, that's bad, you shouldn't have done that, you know, pick up the pieces, sweep it all up, and green flag, carry on again. Yet the cost is huge. It's wasted track time, it's a repaired car, people could potentially be in hospital, even lose their lives. Why doesn't motorsport take more of an attitude towards prevention of accidents through training of the drivers, as opposed to just focusing on the aftermath of the crash? And it's ironic, really, because if you talk about the road toll, the motorsport people are the first to say, oh, no, you should train drivers more, drivers should be more skillful, drive through cones, etc. And yet, in their very own sport, they pretty much ignore driver training. And you can say motorsports is dangerous, and it is, and that should be clearly communicated to everyone as it is, but you can't use motorsports being dangerous as a cop-out for not preparing and training the drivers before they get onto track. So what do you guys think? What would you have learned from this crash? Did you agree with my analysis? And what do you think we should do to make motorsports and wheel-to-wheel racing safer in general?